Hello, this is Eric again. I'm product manager at Caringo, and I'm going to demonstrate for you how you manage content within the system, and that's with our content portal. The thing that a lot of other storage systems overlook is they show you how to manage disk drives and how to manage network connections and how to manage IOPS and all kinds of other things, but what they forget is that the real important thing about storage is not the disk drives and the network cables and the chassis. It's really about the content in the system. And so what do you do for the end user in order to let them manage what's in the system, or to let administrators control and provision the system? And I'm going to demonstrate that today with our content portal. Let me start with the login screen here. This is the same login screen that end users and administrators in the system use, and depending on your access privileges will determine where you start out within the system. Now that I've logged in, I am a storage administrator, so I have the privileges to see the entire system and see all of the tenants within the system. Tenants are an organizational unit under which the storage domains are then allocated. And I'm going to show you the process of creating a new tenant within the system. I'm going to show you then how I create specific storage areas for them and some other aspects of the UI. At the top level, what I'm seeing is the storage trend over time of the cluster, and this is looking at all of the content within our storage cluster. I get a breakdown of who are the top tenants within the system, and I see the same thing for bandwidth. I see the trends over time of bandwidth, bytes in and bytes out, and then who are the top consumers of that bandwidth. So now let me create a new tenant within the system. A tenant would be something like a reseller. If you are an MSP, it could be a business unit for a large enterprise. Okay, so I have created the new tenant within the system. You notice that it's a real-time provisioning and that it's available to me now. At this point, the tenant has been created. However, there are no storage domains for it yet. So the next step for me to do is to create a storage domain. Let me go ahead and actually create two storage domains just to show off the idea that the tenant can own multiple storage domains. And storage domains are organizational areas where they are namespaces within the cluster where buckets and other content are kept. So I've created two tenants now. The first is tenant1.tx.caringo.com, and then second one is tenant2.tx.caringo.com. And these are fully qualified domain names. They are actually the URLs through which the content in the system will be accessed. And so this would be coordinated with your own environment, and the naming scheme would adhere to your corporate policies. The tenants that created here, one of the things you notice is that these are a very lightweight structure within our system. They are ready to go and ready to use right now. There are no additional provisioning steps required before I can start using these after they are created. There's no time to wait for the storage to be set up, or for any other kinds of administrative tasks within the system. So let me go ahead and go into one of the tenants here and create a storage bucket, and then upload some content into that bucket. By default, when we set up buckets, the option here is to make them compatible, the naming to be compatible with the S3, with S3 access. You'll notice that there are naming rules that are checked here in real time. And so if I want these to be compatible through the S3 protocol, I do want to leave this option on so that I get names that are compliant with the SDKs for the S3 protocol. And for measure, let's go ahead and add another bucket here called backups. Going into bucket one here, again, you'll notice that the provisioning was instantaneous for these. There is no content in this bucket yet, so I'm going to upload some files into here. As a user, I can do that through the interface here in my web browser. In larger collections of content would likely be uploaded through some kind of application or through some kind of batch upload. This is for the users to put content in the system, but it's not how you would get millions of files into the system. Millions of files into the system would be through some kind of automated process, and that would depend upon the specific application. So let me find some files here. And let me tag these with some optional fields here. You'll notice that when I dragged the files in at this level, they are staged and ready to be uploaded, but the upload has not yet begun because it's giving me a chance to describe the data with some additional fields here. So I'm going to, these are background screens, and you'll see that as I type, it's showing me what the preview of the names will look like, so I can make sure that I've got them just the way that I want to see them in their final state after they're uploaded. So let me add some additional metadata here. And these are backgrounds. So what I am doing here is I'm adding a custom metadata tag onto these uploads, and it will be stamped with all of these objects so that I can use it later for searching. And I'm going to add just another tag here. Okay, so let me go ahead and start the uploads. Now that I've got the tags on, and you'll see that that goes fairly quickly. So these are all now successfully uploaded into the bucket, and I'm going to browse back to and close this, and we'll now see that those are shown within the bucket. And I can take a look, and you'll notice that on the objects you can see the custom metadata that I have put on there, as well as other information about each of the objects. I can also then get a full-size view of the content as well. So looking within this tenant, we can see that the two storage domains here are owned by the super user, the administrator user in the system. And I'm going to show you how you can assign that ownership to another user. So looking at the buckets in the system, you can see that they also are owned by the administrator user because that's who created these things. So looking at the breadcrumb trail here at the top, we're verified that we're in tenant1.tx.caringo.com. And I'm going to come over here to the settings. And you can see here the owner, as it said in the listing view, is the admin user. I'm going to change this. I have another user in my system that I set up called tenant1 intuitively, and I'm going to now save that. Let me take a look at the other tabs here and what the other elements of this screen mean. We have policies for content versioning in the system. We've also got the ability within the system to use a different identity management source, such as a different tree from an LDAP server, an Active Directory, or Linux PAM, and these can be changed on a tenant by tenant or domain by domain basis, so that you can have multiple sets of users and groups within your storage system, or multiple sets of users and groups and identity management systems in use all at once within your storage system. So browsing through the top here, let's look at the permissions tab. By default within the storage system, the owner of a tenant or the owner of a storage domain or bucket are allowed full access, and everyone else in the system is denied access. So when a new domain or new bucket are created, those revert to full control by the owner who created them, and nobody else is allowed access until they are specifically granted access. So for now, I'm going to close this, and we're going to take a look now at the tenant in the system. And you can see now that the ownership of this has changed, and that the new owner is this tenant 1 user. So now that we have assigned ownership of tenant 1 to the user called tenant 1, I'm going to log out as the super user, and I'm going to log in as this tenant 1 user and into the newly created domain. I'm now at the login screen, and I'm going to put in my new username and password here. You notice that the URL up at the top, it's the domain that I created for this user. So every user can have their own domain in the system. These are like, if you were to compare this to Amazon, these would be similar to Amazon regions, except that you can have hundreds and thousands of them within the same cluster, and they can all be customized for the particular user. So you'll see that within this system, I am in the tenant1.tx.caringo.com domain. I am just a normal user in this system. You notice that the tenant portion of this breadcrumb is now gone away, because as this user, I don't have the privileges to see the tenant that I'm in. So my view of the world is just at my storage domain. You'll see the same buckets here that we previously created, and I'm going to create another one here. And for this, I am going to add a few files to it. So now I'm going to add browse to the place where I have some sample images. Let me pull the same ones as last time, but I'll just add them in a separate bucket here. And again, I have the ability here to put additional information about these, add some additional metadata tags. And start the upload. And those are now in the system as before.